Good morning, chat. How you doing today? Everybody feeling good? What did everybody have for breakfast this morning? Oh, Pearl's up here to cause chaos. I had overnight oats this morning too. It was good. Hello, hello. So, I'm really proud of myself this morning. I got up and I prayed and I ate and I did yoga. And I got up on time too. Like I didn't oversleep. So that was really nice. I think it's because I took my shot. Like I've taken my shot on time. Um, because I had been like rationing because of, the state of things. And I ended up really depressed. Which would explain like not the last live stream because that was the one with Mama Heather, but the live stream before that. And why I was in the state that I was in. And why I was kind of starting to lose it, All right. So, on that note, let's see, how many people do we have in here? 13. What do y'all want to chit-chat about while we wait for people to come into stream? Got any questions? Yeah, my brain also goes to mush. Like, I have felt for the past 6 months like I was walking in a dream. Like I wasn't, like, all there. And it's been really hard to get through. Especially because I've got this very, like, forward-facing job. Excuse me. And so I've got this very forward-facing job, and where I'm kind of expected to, like, get on camera and smile and be coherent, And I was not. And actually, like, somebody had left me a comment that was like, I am worried about Pop Pop because he does not seem entirely coherent in his videos anymore. And I was like, yeah, bud, fascism will do that to you. But apparently, also what will do that to you is not having the right hormones in your body. And I realized, I think a lot of the reason I was having such bad PTSD is because my body was, like, reverting to a time when I did not have proper hormones in it. And that, between that and just, like, the feeling of being in survival mode was just, like, setting off all these alarm bells. And I was not good. I was not good. Yeah, I've been intentionally dosed half of my Seroquel for the last few months. A different friend is stockpiling subs. I don't recommend it. Yeah, that's the thing, is, like, I know a lot of people right now who are, like, rationing their medications, and this is going to be disastrous. Like, at this point, I have to say, like, just take your meds, like, just take your meds. Hi, Pearl. Do you want to see the baby? Come here. Come here. Don't run from the Lord, Pearl. There we go. There's the baby. There she is. She wants attention until I have to grab her. There we go. You want to be famous? Is that what you want? But yeah, I know a lot of people who've been rationing their medications, um, and I cannot recommend doing such a thing. My mental health really, really suffered, and I've realized that I would rather, if I'm going to get cut off eventually, I would rather spend the time I have before then being happy, and being functional and being able to like walk through my life. Um, before I inevitably, if I get my meds cut, become like a mumbling subway person, I think I hear Luna upstairs being crazy now too. But yeah. Alright, so we've gotten a few more people in chat. Heather says she's not going to let me become a mumbling subway person. We'll be going through that together if it happens, at least, I suppose. Yeah, no, and I've thought about, like, okay, so a lot of people really hate homeless people, which is awful and needs to end. And I wish they would realize, like, just looking through my comment section yesterday on the video I posted about, like, how I was losing my mind because I was rationing my meds, um, I wish people would realize that, like, if queer people and depressed people, like queer people and people with mental illness, do not have their medications, like, it's just going to make this problem worse. Like, you're going to have so many more homeless people because you're going to create a whole bunch of people that cannot function, that cannot, maintain employment, that cannot, keep themselves from, like, episodes of psychosis. And, like, for a lot of trans people, what I had realized, because I was like, okay, is this a thing? Is this just a me thing? Like, what is going on there? Because I hadn't really talked to other trans people about having those kinds of, like, mental health effects when we don't have access to our meds. And, like, what I realized is, like, oh, there is going to be a massive spike in homelessness if, like, trans people are cut off of hormones. Like, that is just the reality of the situation. Like, is going to be a massive spike in queer homelessness. And, like, I'm like, okay, you have essentially created a whole new fucking problem that you're gonna have to deal with. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Like, we bring up the, self-unaliving statistics a lot, when it comes to trans people. And I do wonder if we should play more into the, like, homelessness statistics. Like, if you do this, you are going to be creating more people who, like, they care a lot about, like, who pays taxes, right? Like, which, shouldn't matter, like, because people are people and your value is based off of, you being an alive human. But, like, you are getting rid of a bunch of taxpayers if you end up forcing a bunch of trans people into, like, homelessness or, like, underground, like, what word can I use that's not going to get me demonetized? Spicy accounting. Like, that's what you're going to do. You're going to force us back into that kind of life. And if that's the case, you're going to lose our taxes. And maybe that's the way we need to present this. Like, we have to just play into the fact that these are awful people who only care about profit. Ow! Pearl, what the hell? This cat just bit my leg. She just bit my leg for no freaking reason. Look, you're being shamed on camera now for your behavior. Yeah, honestly, Felix, I'll probably be having seizures if I cut meds without tapering them too. When it comes to my Lamictal, like that would be what happened to me too. That would be one I would be more likely to taper. With the testosterone, man, I can't recommend the tapering. I gotta say, it just kind of extends suffering. Yeah. Yeah, I have seizures as well. So it like the Lamictal is a like two birds one stone kind of med for me, which is really nice actually because it keeps me from having to take another med. We have a joke amongst my buds that the same 10 Wellbutrin and the same 10 cabs get traded around. Truly, like the state of healthcare in this country is so bad, dude. And it's just gonna keep getting worse under this administration. I too love my Lamictal. Yeah, there are definitely certain meds that can't be stopped suddenly. Like, that's the thing. Like, that that's what also kills me is I'm like, you are gonna be sentencing certain people to like unalive. Like that is just what's gonna happen. Like people are just not gonna be around anymore. Because some meds, like you cannot be cut off them suddenly without tapering down without adverse effects. I guess I should say like if you are rationing, like be safe. Be safe. And with things like testosterone or estrogen, I really can't recommend it. Like, it's... Yeah, that's the thing. Like, what the hell are people going to do? Like I said, you are going to create a massive health problem. Like, and I know that, like, Republicans don't care about causing massive health problems. Like, they do not give a shit. But, like, what you're going to do is create an underclass of people who are literally incapable of functioning. And why? Why do that when you could have people who are capable of functioning? I don't understand the logic. Is it just, it has to just be blind, stupid hate. Like, that's the only thing I can think of, is that, like, you are so blinded by hatred and stupidity that you are no longer acting in the interest or well-being of literally anyone. And I think a lot of it too, for at least like the politicians, right, is just greed, just blatant greed. And I think that the way this is going to have to be presented, like we have to stop appealing to their good nature, right? Like we have to stop appealing to their sense of empathy. They think empathy is a sin. The only thing we can appeal to is their pocketbook. The only thing we can appeal to is their pocketbook, because they do not care about other human beings. They see us as generators of profit. And so I think the only way to present these things to a lot of these people is that, like, this is going to cost them money because a lot of these people are going to quit being generators of profit. My IV treatment is still in a shortage due to last year's flood and the current tariff, and I'm just waiting to be triaged by the system when they run out and then stuck bedbound again. Jesus Christ. I'm just so sick of this, man. Like, you could have people who have, like, normal, healthy, like, functional lives. And, you know, maybe those people will need accommodation, but, like, you are destroying human beings. And I cannot understand that. I cannot understand being that hateful and greedy and stupid. Like, it's just so hard for me to wrap my head around. All right. Well, so what I wanted to talk about on this stream, um, since we have been talking about the Pope a lot, and a lot of people bring up like Catholic guilt, um, I think that guilt, you know, as much as it's like Catholic guilt is like a kind of a little joke at this point, um, I think a lot of people struggle with guilt and self forgiveness. I think a lot of people struggle with forgiveness of others. I do. I can tell you that personally. Like, people will be like, "Oh, I don't know." Like, um, somebody in my comments the other day was like, "Oh, you know, I can tell you're not like a former Catholic because you're not like racked by guilt." I'm like, "Oh man, my wife would disagree with this sentiment." My wife would disagree with this sentiment because she has to put up with me and my like perpetual state of guilt. Um and so today I wanted to talk about um guilt and how we manage our guilt, and how we learn to forgive ourselves, and how we learn to forgive others. And frankly, I am looking for input on this because, like I said, I struggle with this myself. As somebody who has like a bit of a checkered past, as someone who has done quite a few things in my past that I am not proud of, and who also has like a lot of holes. Um, in terms of my like memories of my past because of, you know, the substances and the head trauma and and the, you know, mental illness, where I don't know what has happened and what I have done. And like I talked to my therapist about it, and she's like, "You're filling in blanks with like the worst case scenario." Um because you have no evidence of anything at all. Um, and I'm like, "Okay, well, you're probably right." And so I wanted to talk today about like how we manage this. Because I think too, a lot of our guilt can kind of manifest in these very strange ways, right? I think that, you know, this guilt can sometimes contribute to, we've talked a lot about like insecurity, right? And not feeling secure in our sense of self. And I think that guilt can sometimes manifest in that way as well and can contribute to that. Oh, sorry. Excuse me. Um, and, you know, it can cause us to project our own guilt and our own shortcomings onto other people. So I think it's really important to manage that. And not just because it can be directed outward, but because it can be directed inward as well. And God, in my opinion, God does not want us to do harm to ourselves. Um, when God wants us to love all creatures on earth, I do think that that includes ourselves. Um, I think God wants us to see ourselves as not better than anyone, but, you know, equal and beautiful and worthy of love. Um, I think that God offered, like, because I am a Christian, I believe that God offered us through Jesus the opportunity for self-forgiveness. This is, I think, Jesus's message, part of it was the ability to move on from past mistakes, the ability to atone for that which we have done. Um, and I think that's kind of what, like, the ritual of baptism is about. It's about washing away that which we have done in our past so that we can let go of the guilt and move forward. And that's a hard balance to strike, because what do we do when people claim this just so they can get away with things, right? Um, I think of, like, you know, Kat Von D and Russell Brand, and perhaps those two are, you know, legitimately trying to atone for what they have done in their past, um, by, you know, converting to Christianity and getting baptized. Um, but I don't know that they are, and I don't know what's in their hearts, and I have skepticism on that. And so how do we manage all of these things? You know, these people who, how do we ensure we give everyone, including ourselves, the grace to atone? Because I think that that is the most difficult part of all of this. We don't want to forgive people because forgiving people is scary, and because a lot of them don't deserve it. Um, and I think that's kind of where mercy comes in, right? Like, forgiveness, like, grace is for, you know, allowing people to make mistakes, right? Um, Mercy is forgiving people who don't deserve it. And I too struggle with this. I too struggle with grace. I struggle with mercy, and I think it's important to admit to that, because I think a lot of ministers will just pretend that they do not struggle with these things, and I think that that's a really bad move. I think that it's important to let people know that we all struggle with these things. Um, can we talk about how forgiving someone actually works? Like, I'm good at giving apologies when I'm the one in the wrong, but how do you go about forgiving someone when they've wronged you? Okay, so you know what has been really, really helpful for me? Because like I said, I'm still very much struggling with self-forgiveness, but when it's come to forgiving others, um, it has helped me to think of it a bit like we think of, like, debt forgiveness, right? Um, like, instead of it being like a um like, oh, like, it's not, I don't think forgiveness is the same as reconciliation, right? Like, reconciliation is when two people decide to put aside their differences and return to the relationship, right? um I think forgiveness is different in the sense that I don't think you have to return to the relationship. I think that what forgiveness is like forgiving a debt. Like, you no longer owe me. You no longer, I no longer expect you to return payment. I no longer expect you to atone. I have given that up. Now, just like with debt forgiveness, you can choose whether or not to give them another loan, right? Like, you don't have to give them another loan. You don't have to let them back into your life. You don't have to give them another chance. But that letting go is very, very important, because if not, you just carry that around waiting for that debt to be repaid. And a lot of the time, it's not going to be. It's not going to be repaid. And you have to accept that so that you can move along without all of that pain and suffering inside of you. What are you two doing? Are you being cranky at each other this morning? Cats. Honestly, the biggest thing that combats my deep guilt is doing the opposite of what my guilt wants me to do. When I want to isolate, I go out in public. It's constant exposures, but it's worth it. I often give too much grace to some people, and it can put me in dangerous positions. But giving grace to myself, oof, I gotta work on that. Yeah. I too am someone who probably gives a bit too much grace, but to me, that is just part of the religion, right? Like, that is just kind of the cross to bear with my particular religion, is to give grace, because I think that there are certain people whose responsibility it is to do that. Oh, I think I kind of have been doing that. I gave up on looking for acknowledgement of wrongdoings or apologies. Thinking of that as debt forgiveness is really helpful, actually. Yeah, that's really helped me a lot. Like, I am never going to... This is a person who is probably never going to atone, and I have to give up expectation of that payment. Now, should in the future they decide to do that anyway, you know, then we can kind of, like, the case-by-case basis, right? We have to go from there. And I think that, you know, it's very, very difficult, especially for those of us who have been hurt, we want to hold on to that, right? We want to hold on to that pain, I think, because it makes it feel real, and we don't want it to be forgotten so that we don't make the same mistakes in the future. But the thing is, that kind of thing, that hatred and that anger, it destroys us from the inside out. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, no, it's a motivator, but that motivator burns out so fast. Like, it cannot be a motivator forever. And it's not a rational motivator. That's why, like, a lot of people will be like, oh, you know, I'm doing this out of spite. Like, I'm holding on out of spite. And I'm like, okay, I get it. And if that's what keeps you going, all right. I do encourage you to find something else, because that spite will run out. It will burn you out. And it'll burn a hole in your soul. And you don't want that. That's not what's best for you. It's not what's best for everybody else, because love is what keeps us persevering. And I'm a man who spent a lot of my life running on spite and hatred and anger. And it just burnt a hole in me. You know, it's not like I think sometimes people think I'm a bit naive, you know, when I talk about this kind of stuff. Like, oh, you know, you're naive, you just think everyone should be forgiven and all of this. No, this was a hard fought battle. This was something I have logically come to the conclusion of based on a life experience that has been difficult. It is not... I think that people are kind of sick of that liberal, like, oh, you know, both sides, let's come together, you know, let's not make waves. And that is not at all what I am talking about, right? I think that it is important to make waves. I think it's important to be honest with people, especially those who have hurt you, and let them know. I don't think that we should like be both sidesing this. I don't think we should just be allowing people to do whatever they want. I don't think we should, I don't think we should be spineless. I think that true forgiveness and true reconciliation, and I think all of that is, and grace and mercy, I think those things are incredibly difficult. I think they're things we don't want to do. And I think that's why they're brought up so often in the Bible. Because I think that, like, a rabbi once told me that if God keeps bringing up something in the Bible, it's because that's something human beings don't want to do, right? Like, when you were a kid and your parents would be like, take out the trash. And you didn't want to do it, so they'd have to tell you again, take out the trash. And eventually you just started taking out the trash. If God is telling us to do something a lot in the Bible, it's because God is nagging us to do it. And so I think that mercy and grace and forgiveness are some of the things we just simply do not want to do. We don't want to do them because they're hard and they're frightening. And they don't feel like justice. We want punishment. We want people to face consequences. We want people to hurt when we have been hurt or when they have hurt other people. And that is a very human thing to do. But I have finally gotten to the point, I don't know if you guys have noticed, I have not told as many Germ stories lately. And there is a reason for that. And that is because I have forgiven him. At least for, there are some things I don't have the right to forgive him for. Crimes that were not committed against me. But I have forgiven him for the crimes he has. And I have not told these stories lately because I want to let him go. I want to let him go. I hope he finds himself in a place one day where he can admit to his wrongdoings, and seek out forgiveness and atonement, and where he learns from what he has done and does not make these kinds of choices in the future. You can hear Pearl. She's just meowing for no reason. Pearl, what's going on? The distinction between giving grace and still properly keeping accountability is very confusing, especially in the moments of conflict. Yes. In the emotions of conflict, sorry. Yeah, no, that it is a conversation that needs to be had. God, these dumb cats. It is a conversation that has to be had, and it is a conversation we don't like having. Because emotions start running high, right? Emotions start running high when we talk about forgiving people who have done things that feel unforgivable, right? We have a hard time talking about that stuff. We have a hard time having those kinds of conversations because people do not want that. And I understand, right? Like, I understand the emotional impact of that, right? I understand the emotions behind wanting punishment, right? But I have found, like I said with Germ, that I am happier. I do not want this man to rot in a cell for the rest of his life. I don't. I don't want that for anyone. I want him to be separated from society. I think that is probably best for everyone, at least for right now. And I want him to have the opportunity to atone for his sins. I want him to have to be involved in some sort of community atonement, a community service. And I think because of what he has done, that community service will need to last for a very long time, if not indefinitely. But I do not want him to rot in a cell. That is not, I do not want him to die. I do not want that anymore. There was definitely a time. There was definitely a time in my life where I wanted that. But I feel like I have moved into a place where I just want him to be separated so that he can no longer hurt others, and where I want him to learn, and to be able to atone and to be able to provide a service to his community and be a contributing member of society. That's what I want for him. People think that forgiveness is entirely about the other person, but most of the time it's about us and our ability to keep going without it eating us alive. Exactly. And I think people don't want to admit that it's eating them alive, you know? I've talked about forgiveness before in videos, and I have had people come in very, very upset, very emotional, experiencing some sort of, traumatic, I don't want to use the word trigger because, like, I feel like that's been, like, so overused to the point of meaninglessness now, but they're experiencing some sort of, like, traumatic emotional state, right? And that the thing is, like, forgiveness helps you to move through that so that when these things get brought up, you don't experience that traumatic emotional state anymore, at least not as heavily, right? Like, forgiveness is one of those things that helps you move past that which has held you back. And I think a lot of people, because they're caught up in that trauma, that emotion, they don't even realize that forgiveness is the thing that's keeping them there. It's keeping that, like, the lack of forgiveness. The lack of forgiveness is the thing that's keeping them there in that moment. And that moment is, like, wired into their brain now, and they can't let it go. And it's a struggle. It's definitely a struggle. Pearl, stop trying to steal my shoe. Like, what the hell? She's being a chaos demon this morning. Since we're also talking about guilt, forgiving yourself doesn't mean you're okay with what you did. Not forgiving lets you wallow in guilt that might feel like some adequate punishment. Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's what I'm trying to work through right now. Like, how do I atone for what I have done in the past? Atone for my checkered past, where I was in a state where, because I think for a lot of the time when it comes to, like, personal guilt, right? You feel like by letting it go, you're allowing yourself off the hook, right? I think that that's kind of the function that your brain wants with that emotion, to keep punishing yourself because you feel like you have to keep being punished. And that is something, like I said, I've struggled with as well. Like, if I let this go, if I let this guilt go, it is a disservice to people I have hurt in the past, right? It is a disservice to them. I deserve to suffer because I hurt others. And I think that is, many ways keeping me from actually moving into a place where I can help others more efficiently. I've actually said before on TikTok, part of what this channel is to me is my atonement. It is how I am giving back for what I have taken. Sorry, I got a little emotional, calming myself down now. Gonna drink some water, hit my vape. Is this thing leaking? Do I have a leaky water bottle? Well, thank you. I appreciate that, guys. I hope that what I do is seen that way. I know that, content creation for a lot of people is kind of seen as like because it is so forward facing, I think it's kind of seen as like something you do to get attention, right? Um, and what I've kind of realized is that I have a skill for getting attention, um, and perhaps I can use that to make the world a little bit better place. Like, I'm a natural yapper, and maybe I can do something with this, to try to improve things, to leave the world better than I found it, and better than I have made it for a good chunk of my life. So yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at with the whole thing. Um, I think that, when it comes to forgiving oneself, like I said, I think that that's where, like, rituals like baptism and confession can come in handy. I really wish that more people would see the value of that instead of just kind of writing it off as like, oh, this is like a supernatural way of like absolving yourself so that you can continue doing what you've done already. And that's the thing, is like, I think in order to like truly confess, you have to also like accept that you've done something wrong, right? And I do think, well, you can obviously confess to God, right? Like, I am a Protestant. I do not believe you have to go through like a priest or a bishop to receive forgiveness from God. I do think that talking to someone, whether that's a spiritual advisor or like a therapist, can help you work through those emotions. And I think it's important to confess. Um, I think that that's like and confess honestly, confess the gritty details, the things you don't want to admit to yourself. I think that's the only way to like move past it, you know? And I think we need to encourage like true confession. I think because of the internet, we we don't really prioritize that, I don't think we prioritize it in general, just like as people, but I think the internet's made that worse. I think attention is a neutral thing to want. It's the why behind it that matters. And I think you have some of the best intentions I've ever seen. Well, thank you. I really do appreciate that. And I'm glad that you like what I do and that it's helped. Really and truly. I wouldn't do this. Like, honestly, part of the reason I've had such a struggle with this job lately is because I'm like, because of these algorithms, because of the discourse, I'm like, am I doing something that's actually helping people, or am I contributing to a problem? And so I'm always very, very aware of that when I'm creating content, because I do not want to contribute to this problem of the fact that the world is loud and the internet makes it louder. Um, I think it's important to remember that. I think it's important for content creators to remember that. Um, I think it is our responsibility to use the platform we have been given in a way that helps other people and doesn't tear us apart. You are an integral part of me interacting with God and getting involved with my community again. Also, being the first trans mask parent that I looked at and realized I could do this too. Well, thank you very much. Seriously, guys. Like, I'm not like fishing for compliments, but I do like knowing that what I do impacts people in this way, that I am working towards my own redemption, I think that sometimes it's hard to come to terms with your past, you know? And I wish more people would do that. I wish that people could experience this. You know what I mean? I wish that I think that people, what they want to do when they've done things wrong is they want to hold that all inside and just be like, no, that never happened. I'm different now. I'm a different person. Not like, why is everybody still holding this against me? What is, what do I even do with myself? And I think that is not the best way to go about things. I think that there has to be, like, even if, you're someone who you don't have to do it publicly. You know what I mean? You don't have to do it publicly. You don't have to, throw yourself onto the cross or anything like that. I think that you have to, but I do think you have to do it in some way. You have to admit to yourself, at least, and to God, and to probably at least one other person, that you have done wrong. That you have done these things that you aren't proud of. And God forgives. Even if people don't, God will. And so you would at least have that forgiveness to move forward on, because God sees when you are trying to change. I really do believe that. I have to. God, see, I'm also on my period, so please have grace for me, okay? This is my first period in 5 years. Wanting compliments should be okay without having to call it a praise cake. No, I think it's okay to want compliments, and I think that it's okay to give compliments. Okay, so I am a man who has given many a compliment to a stranger, and like it bothers me so much when men are like, you can't even give a woman a compliment anymore. And I'm like, I do this all the time, and I've never had a woman get mad at me or even uncomfortable, because I know how to give women compliments. Okay? If you compliment a woman on something like, my standard, right, is that if you are complimenting a woman in public, you have to compliment her on something she chose. You have to compliment her on something she chose. You can't just be like, nice rack. Like, yeah, of course she's gonna be weird about that. She's gonna feel weird about that. You're being weird. But if you're just like, oh man, those are great shoes. I love your manicure. Like, those are things that she has chosen for herself, and then you are complimenting her taste. And that is different. It is different. I compliment women all the time. You know why? Because women wear fabulous things, and I want to tell them. So it drives me crazy when men are like, you can't even compliment a woman anymore. Like, yes, you can. It's actually super fucking easy. All right. So, since we're on the subject, what are some ways we are going to, in the future, work on our guilt, our forgiveness, and try to move through the things in our lives that have caused us pain in the past? There's this discourse on TikTok right now about whether or not it's okay to talk to a stranger in public, and it's actually driving me bananas. People are so scared of conversation and community. That also drives me crazy. Like, yes, you should talk to strangers in public. Yes, you should. You should do that. Yep, that's how we connect. That's how humans have connected since we came into existence. And yes, yeah, no, I feel like that is that is the result of, like, yeah, I don't know. The internet, the COVID, there's a million things. We are becoming an antisocial species, we are falling into individualism, and that is very bad for us. We're going to destroy ourselves if we keep doing that. Yeah, it's just hyper-individualism. It's just hyper-individualism. Like, yes, you should talk to people in public. You should, even if it's just a quick chat, a quick compliment as you walk by. I told a lady, like an old lady in Walmart the other day, because she was in her, like, Sunday best, right? Like, but she was wearing this beautiful hat. The kind of hats you never see people wearing anymore, you know? And I was like, oh, that is a fabulous hat, ma'am. Absolutely wonderful. And she was like, oh, thank you, you know? And, like, when you compliment people in public on the things they choose for themselves, they light up. Because people want to feel like they have good taste. They just do. And people like those kinds of compliments. And you don't have to be freaky about it, man. But you should talk to people in public. You should. You absolutely should. You absolutely should. I don't care what anybody else has to say on this. I'm digging my heels in on this one. In fact, I encourage everyone to talk to strangers in public. And I think that people should talk to strangers in public more often. Whether comments are always appropriate. Yeah, exactly. I honestly prefer talking to elderly folks in public to younger folks because they're actually willing to have a quick chat and connect. Yeah, younger people, I've noticed, if you, like, talk to them in public, they act like you're from another fucking planet, and y'all have got to get over yourselves on that. I'm sorry, you're adding to the hyper-individualism of our society. If you want socialism, you have to be social. I'm going to beat this horse into the ground, okay? Like, I will hammer this over and over and over and over and over again. You're antisocial. You are contributing to hyper-individualism, and you don't even realize it. Obviously, don't talk to every single person, but you at least need to meet new people. I get it can be daunting, but it's okay to just exist naturally around others. Truly. Truly. I always see people on the internet talking about this, but I've never had anyone react badly in person. Yeah, no. This is an internet problem. And that's the thing, is a lot of these internet problems are beginning to leak into actual real life. And it's becoming an issue. Like, this is an internet problem that actual human beings don't actually care about. That's the thing, is, like, there's so much stuff I see on the internet, and then you, like, go into real life, and it is completely different. Activism, like, left-leaning activism, is like this a lot. Don't get me wrong, I have definitely worked with some very insufferable leftists over the years. But what I have noticed is, like, in-person activism is not like it is online. It just isn't. That is not how actual human beings work. Actual human beings tend to be a bit more conflict avoidant. They tend to, try to keep peace amongst people. They try to understand one another. They try to find a place for everyone. Like, in-person leftist activism, from my experience, largely follows these principles, especially where I live. I have noticed that in-person leftist activism is best in communities of color and amongst people who are poor. I think that part of the reason I have had this experience with leftist activism is because I'm Appalachian. I think that really does contribute to it, because we are all on the same page of knowing we are screwed if we don't learn to work together. And I think that in a lot of places, especially with people of my skin tone, they have never had to actually do that. They've never actually had to interact that way. And because of that, I think that it's much easier for this kind of like chronically online behavior to leak into those kinds of movements. We have definitely had some people who have come in very chronically online. And they are a nightmare to work with. And I wish people would realize that. I wish people would realize, like, okay, the left in person is very different from the left online. And when the online left comes into real life activism spaces, there is at the very least, an adjustment period for them. Where they have to get used to being in the trenches. Because, like, okay, if you're feeding the homeless, you have to, like, people don't want to give people soup in theory, right? They don't want to give people, they're like, oh, well, I don't want to give the bad person soup. That's not my responsibility. Okay, if you're giving out soup, you're not asking people. You're not asking people, okay? You're not asking people who they voted for. You're not asking people what they've done in their past, right? You're just giving out soup. And you're not going to sit there and offer like a full interrogation of everyone's beliefs as you're handing out soup. That's just not how any of this works. And so you start to get used to and see these human beings that you significantly disagree with as human beings. We had done a survey amongst our homeless population here, mostly to make sure they had access to the things they need. And one of the questions on this was, did you vote? Did you have access to vote? Because we wanted to make sure our homeless friends had what they needed to get to the polling booth, right? Like, because they are American citizens, they deserve to have their voices heard, the same as anyone else, right? And we wanted to ask them too if their local politicians were reaching out to them, right? Like, has any politician come to talk to you? Have you been able to attend any town halls? Things like that. Because, these people deserve access to food and water and shelter, but they also deserve to be able to advocate for themselves. And so we had, created this questionnaire. We didn't ask people who they voted for, right? We just asked them if they did, if they were able to. And a lot of people offered up the information that they had indeed voted for Donald Trump, and they thought that that was going to be what was best for them. They offered up this information. And it is so frustrating to see people who are in this state who genuinely believe that that man is going to improve their lives. And it was heartbreaking. Whereas, like, I think that when you're online, it's very easy to just be angry at these folks. It's easy to just be like, well, you're, an idiot. But when you have to look them in the face and they are telling you genuinely with all the passion and belief and faith of a human being in front of you that they did this because they thought that he would improve their lives, then you just feel sad. And you're not angry at them anymore. You're angry at Donald Trump. You're angry at him for being a con man and for tricking these incredibly desperate people into believing this. And it is so heartbreaking and it's so frustrating. And I think that that's what is missing online, is that you are not speaking to an actual human person who's you can hear their voice and you can see the look on their face and you can tell to some extent if they are being genuine. I think that screen puts a filter between things. And it keeps us from solidarity. Because now what I want for these people is I want to make the world better for them so that they do not fall for a trap like this again. Luna is very, very chatty today. it's starting to spill over into the real world, which worries me. Yeah, no, like I said, I've definitely run into some activists who have had this problem, of like the virtue signaling, especially, where they're constantly trying to be like the best activist and throw other people under the bus. And what I've realized is that if you have a really good group, those people stop being invited to things. They just stop being invited to things because they can't be trusted. And they break everything apart. And people get really sick of them constantly starting drama, because that's what it is. They will hide the fact that they want to start drama behind like a social justice movement, but it is constant conflict, and people can't work under those conditions. And so they will quit inviting them to things. And then they all end up in a polycule with each other. That's usually what happens. Because the only people they can manage is themselves, each other. And even then, those usually break apart. My wife says, as a hijabi, I have had my share of bad interactions, but mostly, actually, overwhelmingly so, people are very nice. Ollie is often witness to me conversing with some random person in the store. Yeah, like really and truly. People are good. And this is something that is hard to believe, especially in our current era. But something that like traveling and hitchhiking and hopping trains has taught me is that most people are good. Really and truly, deep down, most human beings are good, and they want to do right by others, and they want to create a world that is better. I genuinely believe this. And I have found that spending a lot of time having this job has made keeping that faith more difficult, because you are constantly seeing people at their worst. You're constantly seeing what people will say when they are anonymous and don't have to face any real consequences. Most human beings are good. Now, there's certainly some who have fallen prey to their worst instincts. But I really do believe that. I really do think that most people want to help one another, to be kind to one another. I just think that some people are, they get caught up in their own selfishness, their own greed. They fall into traps, they fall into temptation. And I think that most people think that they are acting in their own self-interest. And the individualism does not help with that. I think that has to be a barrier that's broken down. That's why I said I will dig my heels in talking to strangers in public. Because the hyper-individualism is leading to a lot of problems for all of us. And that has to be tackled. It is a root cause. Maybe this is a hot take, but I think people need to connect and be in community with MAGA folks. It actually is so important. Isolation breeds conspiracy. I tend to agree with you. I know, and I don't think you are required. Okay? I'm never going to tell anyone they have to. But I am also never going to consider someone a traitor if they do. I think that de-radicalization is incredibly important work, and I understand that people who do that kind of work are not going to be able to use the same language as people who are not involved in that work. I understand that they are not going to be able to be as overt. They're not going to be able to virtue signal in the way that people who are not engaged in that work will. And I think that people expect that, right? They expect that people will very much wear their belief systems on their sleeves and virtue signal their positions. And that can get in the way of very real work that needs done through de-radicalization. And I do not think we should be pressuring people in that way. I do not think we should be pressuring people to constantly virtue signal every single position they have, because that is a person then that will not be able to engage in de-radicalization work, because they will not be able to connect with folks that need de-radicalized. And it's very, very frustrating to me. So yes, if you have the skills, the energy, the time, the desire to engage with these people and try to change their minds, I think you should. I think that if God is putting that on your heart, then that's something you should do. And I do not think that we should be giving anyone any grief. I think that if you see someone who is trying to engage in that kind of work, you need to shut the hell up. You need to shut the hell up and let them cook. Because I actually had an experience in my own community where I had a friend who was really deep into the Israeli propaganda, right? Really deep into the American propaganda about Israel, I should say. And Heather and I were both we were keeping him close because we knew he was a good person, and we could tell that these two viewpoints he was holding, which was that he thought that what was happening in Gaza was horrific, and that he thought, the state of Israel was the only way for Jewish people to be safe. And there were these two conflicting worldviews that he was trying to hold in his head, and he was cracking. Like, it was causing him, like, mental health issues, right? And so Heather and I were, like, keeping him close in hopes that we could try to get him to see reason, because he was so close, right? He was so freaking close because he couldn't handle it. They were two things that were, like, incompatible in his brain. So, and what happened? Those people I talked about, how we've had a couple chronically online people in our group, they came into the chat and they did a big session where they virtue signaled and said they had to leave because of, this person and all of this stuff. And they made a big scene, a big stink about it, and how morally good they were, and how me and Heather were enabling this behavior. And it set my friend back about 6 fucking months. It set him back about 6 months. And eventually, he did come to the conclusion that he had been propagandized, and that he would like to work with Muslims and Christians in this community to make some sort of interfaith coalition and work towards peace. And that was the place we wanted to get him to. And it set him back 6 months. And I was so mad. And I'm still pretty mad about that, honestly. I'm still pretty mad. Just talking about it kind of pisses me off. But those people have stopped being invited to things, like I said. They've stopped being invited to things because they do things like that. They do things like that where they could have come to me and been like, okay, this person, they seem like they got some viewpoints that aren't great. What's going on there? And I could have explained to them what was happening. But they did not do that. They instead decided they knew what was going on and had to be very loud about it so everybody would know that they were the best allies to the Muslim community, that they were the best allies to Palestinians. They did not even ask my Muslim wife about this. They did not talk to her about it. And it was so frustrating. So frustrating. Sorry, I will get off this tangent now. Had a friend who was chronically unhoused in MAGA, gave him a ride to his campsite, and he essentially confessed to me that he loves lesbians and dreams of wearing women's clothes. It was eye-opening. Yeah, that sounds like some egg shit right there. Most people are good. It's just the ones who aren't get to be louder and take up more space because they don't feel bad when they do it. Yep. Yep. De-radicalization is so important, but definitely not for everyone. But I found it to be a skill that comes natural to me, and I'm grateful for it. Yeah, and people should let you cook. People should let you cook. And they shouldn't give you grief for it, because it's very important work that needs done. My wife, Heather, were you referring to the incident when you say you've never wanted to punch people so much? That was such a frustrating couple weeks. That was such a frustrating fucking couple weeks, man. They caused such a scene. I'm formerly Republican. I'm often way too afraid to go to much in-person left stuff because of the virtue signaling competitions. So, like I said, that is not as much of a thing in in-person leftist circles. And those kinds of people, like I said, they don't tend to last long. They don't tend to last long because they don't want to work with anybody who's impure, and so either they will leave or people will stop inviting them. So with people like that, so don't be afraid to go to in-person left stuff, because the people who do those kinds of things don't last long. They will be gone soon. Like, they will go off, they'll try to create their own thing, which will inevitably fail because they have to engage in that behavior to feel good about themselves, and people won't want to be around it because it becomes like nasty to deal with so quickly. I want to believe people are good, but I've been having my doubts recently on account of gestures wildly. No, I get it. I too have had those doubts. Heather can vouch for the fact that there have been many times over the past several months where I have been like, I think I am losing my faith in God and humanity. Like, I feel like I am losing my ability to see people as they are. And I do think that my job has contributed to that. And that is part of why I think it is important that you talk to strangers in public. I think it's very important to talk to people in public because you will start to see people as people again. You have to see people as people. Complicated people. Sinners. We're all sinners. You know? That's the thing. I feel like when people are like, like a lot of church people, especially like evangelicals, will be like, we're all sinners, and therefore you are bad and disgusting and gross, and you're a chewed up piece of gum, and you are unworthy of love, and the only thing that will make you worthy of love is God's grace, right? And believing in God and believing in Christ, right? And I hate that. I hate it because I think it is such a powerful sentiment that we are all sinners. We are. Every day we do something. We all make mistakes. We all hurt people without realizing it. We all hurt people because we are in certain situations. We hurt ourselves. We cause problems without even understanding what we're doing, or because we don't know better. All of us constantly are doing this every single day. There is no one who is morally pure. You will never get there. Okay? You are never going to be perfect, and that's fine. Okay? Because we're human beings. But what is wonderful is that we have the ability to have grace and to forgive one another and to forgive ourselves and to work through what we have done and to atone. And that is a gift that we have been given, is the opportunity to not be in that state forever. to grow and learn. And I think that that is a wonderful gift God has given us. A wonderful gift God has given us. That we can own up to our mistakes and make up for them, and learn how to not make them again. Honestly, I've gotten pushback for being enabling or being problematic, but TBH, I've seen the material difference the de-radicalization can make, and it's worth it. Yeah, no, I think I've stopped caring whether or not I'm problematic. I really do. I think that that's what going to be part of like the self-forgiveness thing for me, is not caring if people think I am problematic, and not caring if people think that not letting people hold me to an unreasonable standard. And not letting people, because that's the thing too, is like, you know how I brought up, like, you know, a lot of people in the church, a lot of evangelicals will treat people like they're this chewed up piece of gum that can never, you know, never return to what they once were, right? And this is an actual analogy used by the church, especially for women who've like lost their virginity, is that they're a chewed up piece of gum. And I think that the church treats people like they're a chewed up piece of gum, but I think that a lot of chronically online leftists do too. And I'm going to start referring to them as chronically online leftists because, like I said, I think there is a massive difference between the way leftists act in real life, for the most part, like people who have organizing experience, people who've been doing this a long time. There's a huge difference between how they act and how chronically online leftists act. Like, really honestly. And so I'm going to make that distinction, which is that... God, I forgot what I was gonna say. My brain just fucking blanked out. Just done. Oh, what did I say, guys? Do any of you remember? I gotta go to chat. I gotta go to chat to get my train of thought back. I know I was talking about chronically online leftists, but I don't remember anything else from there. So many people are focused on fighting what they hate instead of fighting for what they love. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that is a movement that's destined to burn out, because, like, think about it, right? The algorithm can control what we hate every day, right? We see something on our feed, we hate it, we're angry about it, and then the next day there's something else to be angry about. So there's never any focus. If you're focused on what you love, it stays consistent. You don't stop loving it, right? You just keep the love. And so then the powers that be can't pull you around as easily. Oh, okay. Yes, chronically online leftists making fun of people feel like chewed up pieces of gum, all of the church. Yeah. I think that a lot of chronically online leftists treat people like they too are chewed up pieces of gum. Like, if you've done something wrong in your past, like if you've been someone who has made mistakes, even like committed crimes, that you have no hope at redemption, you are this way forever, you can never grow, you can never learn. It is like time is flattened out and you are that thing. You are that thing for the rest of your life. And if you do that, people are never going to change. They're never going to change. They're not going to have any incentive to do that. They are going to hate themselves forever. They are going to live in that guilt forever. And then they are quite likely to reoffend because they're like, well, this is who I am now. This is the defining characteristic of my personality. I am a monster. I am a terrible person. And I think that contributes to people never growing and learning. Never growing and learning. And I think it has done us a disservice because the church does offer one thing, and that is redemption. The church offers redemption, the left does not. We treat people the exact same way the church does. We do not offer redemption on the other side. So people are going to find right-wing insanity more appealing. They just are. That's just how people work. And, like, I'm sorry, like, I don't know what to tell y'all, you know? You don't get to have your cake and eat it too. You don't get to, you know, judge people constantly so that you can feel good about yourself and then expect them to become better people. That's not how any of this works. People are good, but it's also easy to convince people that actions are going to hurt people, that are going to hurt people are actually good actions that will help them or people they care about. Yes. And we see this very clearly with the fact that the right is always talking about saving the children, right? Like, save the children, save the children, save the... They don't give a shit about children. They don't care. They could, and we see it because there are so many predators amongst them. There are so many child predators amongst Republicans. This is not about saving the children. This is about parents wanting full control over everything their children see, do, and experience. And it is about removing them from anything they see as a bad influence. That's it. That is it. It is about them not wanting their children to interact with anything that might make them impure, which they consider, you know, queer people and other minorities impure. And so that's what they want to protect the children from. They don't actually care about the well-being of these children. And so it's very easy for them to run around saying, oh, protect the children. And that is a hard thing to go up against, because then they are saying, we just want to protect children. So how do you counteract that, right? Like, and they utilize that to make people feel like these policies that they want to enact are actually saving children when they are not. They're not. They don't care. They do not care about kids. They don't care about kids at all. And that's why I say lefties need to get better about actually having messaging about protecting children and about wanting children to be safe and about wanting what's best for families. We should not cede that ground to them. Why are we doing that? Why are we allowing that? Why are we letting them have this stuff? Like, lefties will just, and Democrats too, you know, liberals, the left, we will just let Republicans have things. Like, oh, because we don't want to be associated with it, right? We don't want to be associated. That hurts with it. That hurts our pride. We will gladly hand over the entirety of religion to conservatism because we don't want to react. We don't want to interact with that. We will gladly hand over family values to conservatives because we don't want to interact with that. And I hate it. It drives me crazy. Rural culture, we will hand that over to conservatives. Just sit it right directly in their lap because we don't want to fuck with it. And it drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. Y'all will just gift wrap shit for them. And, like, we can't do everything based around how conservatives might react, right? Like, we can't, like, change our policies. Like, the Democrats do that shit all the time, where they're constantly, like, changing their policies to appeal to these people. No, don't do that, but don't cede ground. Do not cede ground to them. Do not gift wrap shit for them. We're so good at that, man. I love queer rural community. It's the best. It's just the best. Yeah. No, I feel like rural queers get it, and I wish people would listen to us because we have had to find community in one another, which means that we cannot afford to pick each other apart. We can't afford to do that. We can't just wander off into another little scene, another little clique. Scenes were a thing that, like, when I was traveling, and I realized they were a thing, I had a really hard time wrapping my head around, right? Because it was like, oh, well, you know, if this scene is causing trouble, I'll just move on to another one. Get a new friend group. What's it matter? You can't do that out here. You can't. Um, you have to work together, which means I find myself working with card-carrying communists and liberal city council members regularly, both of these groups of people. I have to use the restroom. I will be right back. I'm always nervous because my toilet is like my bathroom's right back here, and I'm always afraid y'all are going to be able to hear me piss. So I'm going to turn the sink on so y'all can't hear that. All right, I've returned. I'm biased because I love living rurally, but I think a lot of folks could use a few months living in the sticks so they can learn how to talk to people. Yeah, I think, so here's the thing. I really do think that every high schooler should be required to do some level of community service. Every single one of them. I think it should be a grade that you have to do to pass. Really and truly. I think that it should be a daily class or like a weekly class. One day a week, the whole school goes out and does community service. Truly, because I think that these young people need to learn how to interact with other human beings. And I think that's part of how we have to come back from COVID. We have to like prioritize young people learning to interact socially again because they got their brains fucked by the pandemic. That's why I always have my kids, like my kids go to outreach, they be packing sack lunches, they be walking up to fucking homeless people. And I know that a lot of parents would hate that. They don't want their kids walking up to homeless people. They're scared of homeless people. But my children have never had a bad interaction with homeless people, and they do not understand why so many people are afraid of them. Like, our kids think that's absurd. And it's not like they haven't seen homeless people acting in strange ways. There have definitely been, you know, people who have been on substances, who have, you know, been walking around, yelling, moving in strange ways. My children have seen that. And we've had to talk to them about it. And we've had to let them know about that person's suffering and what we need to do to help people not suffer like that anymore. That is an important conversation to have with your children. It just is. And you have to start them young. You have to foster that empathy. The other thing, while we're kind of on this subject, right? I think young boys, I highly recommend, right, that if you are the parent of a young boy and you can afford it, you need to take them to a some sort of cross-gender sporting community, or like a multi-gender scouting like club or something, where they have to interact and be taught by women in a place of authority, women who are keeping their asses alive or who can kick their ass if they step out of line. My son is in a dojo right now because he's doing kickboxing, martial arts. And he, one of his teachers is a man, one of his teachers is a woman. His class has both men and women, boys and girls in it. Like, it's like a wide age range too, right? And obviously they set people up to spar with people who are like closest in age and size to them, right? But he has to interact with those people. He has to. There's gonna come a day when my son gets his ass kicked by a girl, and that's a good thing, okay? He needs to be humbled in that way, all right? And I highly recommend, if you are the parent of a young boy, putting them in situations where they have to be humbled by women in that way. Okay? Where they have to realize that women can be just as tough as they are, and just as smart, and just as capable. I totally agree with that, and I think the school could work with orgs and just generally help like more elderly people in the community, for example. There's always plenty to do. That's the thing, is that there's so much work that needs done. There's so much work that needs done. Nobody wants to pay for it, right? And our children do not understand civic duty. They don't understand civic duty. They don't understand community responsibility. Okay? They just freaking don't. And we have to instill that in them. They aren't going to learn it on their own. And I think for a long time, people just assumed that what would instill that in our children is the church. And some churches still do. But since this massive right-wing shift, a lot of churches don't. They do not teach children civic duty. They do not teach children community responsibility. And they need to learn that. It is an important skill. They need to realize they are part of something bigger than themselves and they have a responsibility to it. One of my favorite things is walking around town and running to at least 3 homeless community members who already know me. I feel like a celebrity. Yeah, that's the thing. Is like, people in my, not just the homeless folks in my community, like obviously a lot of the homeless folks recognize us too, but my community members recognize me. Like, the the other day I had gone to, okay, so I have like a little routine that I do on Thursdays where I get a coffee and a bagel at my favorite coffee shop in town. I sit there, it's also a bookstore, and I read for a bit. And then I go over to, there's a little grocery store called the Wild Ramp. It's like a farm to table type place. I go over there and I get my wife a little treat, right? And the girl at the Wild Ramp was like, "You didn't come in last Thursday. We missed you." And like, because I'm there so often. And so they notice when I don't come in. And she's like, "I hope that's not weird." I'm like, no, like, it lets me know that my community cares about me and they notice when I'm gone, right? Like, that I am missed, that my presence is noticed, and that my lack of presence is noticed. And I don't think people understand how rewarding that is. To understand that if anything happened to you, people would know. People would know. And especially in the times we're living in now, where, let's be so fucking for real with ourselves, people are going missing. Right? People are going missing because of our government. That knowledge that if anything happened to me, that if I did go missing, people would care, that knowledge helps me get through the day sometimes, you know? And I think everyone deserves that. Everyone deserves to know that if something happened to them, people would notice and people would care. And I think that in and of itself would change public opinion on a lot of the things going on if people knew each other and noticed each other and cared. Because it's one thing for a stranger to go missing. It's another thing for your friend to go missing. That has a different emotional impact. What am I reading right now? So I'm not gonna lie, I've been skimping on my reading. Usually when I go into the bookstore, I just find a random book that looks interesting, and I read a few pages of it while I eat, and then I put it back on the shelf, and sometimes people will have bought it by the time I get back. So there's a couple books that I have started that I can't find anymore now, because I think people probably bought them. One was about like Jesus and Empire and Jesus's interactions with Empire and how he felt about Empire. Another one is by a trans woman who grew up very close to where I grew up, like a couple miles from where I grew up. And she is describing her experiences as an Appalachian trans person. And I recognized the town because it's called like Tar Hollow Trans or something like that. And I'm like, I know where Tar Holler is. Like, I know that, like, that's where I grew up. And so I was like, what is this book? And I started reading a few pages of it, and it's really, really interesting. And that's the one, if they still have it in stock, I'm probably going to read next time I go. That's always what's great about being a regular. I love going to a bar. I don't even have to order a drink. I walk in and get handed a PBR and we just start talking about what's been going on. Yeah, that's the thing, is that, like, I wish people would just have these little places they go to where they're regulars, you know? And I feel like people used to do that all the time, like, where they were, like, regulars at certain locations. Like, my coffee shop knows me, the Wild Ramp knows me, the Euro place knows both me and my wife at this point. And the guy at the Euro place is always, like, coming out with, like, whatever dish he's, like, experimenting with and, like, giving us samples, like, try this, do you like it, do you think it should go on the menu? And it's so much fun to have that kind of community. I go to a little local restaurant for breakfast every weekend, and it feels so good to be able to chat with the people that work there and get recognized when I come in. Yeah, exactly. I work at a community bank, and we've had to be the ones to call for a welfare check on the regular who didn't show up for a few days. He had passed, and we were the first to do anything about it. My God, see? See, that's the thing. And there's so many, like, elderly people I think about. When I was canvassing, I went to a couple houses of, like, very elderly people, like, because they have their age on, like, your little tablet, right? And I had knocked on their door, and there were a couple houses where I'm like, I hope this person isn't home and that they haven't that nothing bad has happened to them and they're just sitting in there. Like, I've definitely worried about that. Because there's so many older people who will just pass in their homes and nobody even realizes it until like weeks later, and it's fucking heartbreaking. We don't take care of our people. We need to start taking care of our people. All right. Well, on that note, we probably do need to start wrapping up our live stream. Not gonna lie, guys, tips have been abysmal lately. I understand everybody's like going through some shit right now, like nobody has any fucking money. But if you would like to donate, our cats really fucking need kitty litter. Like real bad. And kitty litter's fucking expensive for this many cats. Now, you can leave super chats, but be aware I will not get super chats until probably next month. I have to actually get to $100 in super chats before I can cash them out. And not just super chats. I think that does also, like, my ad revenue, which I do get now, contributes to that, but I have to get to $100 before I can cash that out. So here is the Cash App for that. Okay. And down in the description, right, there's a link tree. And that, if you would like to donate to our fundraiser, we are doing a fundraiser that is a cookbook. So even if you don't have money to donate, you can donate a recipe to our cookbook that we can use as a fundraiser. I'm sorry, I have like burps today. It's really gross. I apologize, guys. But so if you would like to contribute but you don't have cash to contribute, that is a way that you can help us keep our outreach going, because we're using that as a fundraiser. All right. Time to read donos. So first off, thank you, Margaritaville, for your super chat today. I greatly appreciate it. And I would also like to give a special thanks to our patrons, Jennifer Davidson, Margaret Capehart, Jessica Bednarek, Ariana, Emma Price, Allison Hill, Lauren O'Connor, Mao, CattyCat66, Nathan, Morgan Western, Eleanor Buxbaum, Jay Winia, Morgan May, Taylor Condra, River Johnson, Angelini Pellegrini, Faith Benamy, Kristen McSorley, Jacqueline Gordon, Devin Watson, Val Smith, Post-Punk Pastor, Pauline Gibson, Lucas Kempe Cook, and John Borg. Thank you guys so much for all of your donations, all of your help. I greatly appreciate it. Words cannot describe how grateful I am that y'all allow me to keep doing this work. You are wonderful. And of course, remember, drink a water, eat a food, try to get a little bit of exercise today. If it's nice, especially, go outside, interact with nature, maybe interact with some people. But make sure you're taking care of yourself, right? Take your meds, take a shower, all of that good stuff. Be kind to yourself, to your neighbor, and to the earth. Thank you guys so much again for everything you do. I hope you have a wonderful day, and